to this course, Introduction to Linguistics. And today we have our ninth lecture, which is supposed to be about discourse analysis. So today we are going to talk about discourse analysis. To begin with, let me introduce to you the meaning of discourse. The term discourse refers to conversation, okay? It refers to something which takes place in social settings. So, discourse, it's about language that looks at beyond the sentence level, and it's concerned with the study of language in text and in conversation. Okay? So language beyond the sentence, and it's concerned with the study of language in text and conversation. Reading a notice like this, no shoes, no surface on shop windows in summer, means a conditional relationship between the two parts. If you're wearing no shoes, you will receive no surface. So, we have the ability to create complex discourse interpretation of fragmentary linguistic messages. So we cannot split the message from the text or from the context. Okay, now we come to one of the important topics related to discourse analysis, which is about interpreting discourse. Okay, many of us can cope with the text which we didn't produce by ourselves, because we are able to build interpretation. In just a few minutes, we will take a few examples which will show to us two examples or two sentences, okay, or two responses between two people, okay, which can build this understanding, although they are talking about two different things, okay, but they have the ability to interpret the message. We'll take this just in the couple in the coming slides. So in many texts, they may contain set of errors, yet they can be understood. For example, let's look at this example, which have a number of grammatical mistakes, but still can be meaningful. Why? Because the other person or the hearer or the listener, okay, can build this kind of interpretation. Okay, this example says, it takes this name from people's career. Okay, there is a spelling mistake here. In my childhood, I remember, and here we have this also another mistake. I remember the people life. Okay, it was very simple. Most of the people was farmer. So in these two lines, there are many grammatical mistakes, and there are some problems or some errors related to wrong structure as well. But still, we can understand this text. We can build this interpretation. We can build the meaning, although there are a number of errors and mistakes. So this example about my town explains some ungrammatical forms, yet we can reach a reasonable interpretation. We can reach a reasonable meaning. Okay, we can understand it. We can build a good interpretation of what the writer or even the speaker is intended to say or to convey. To interpret something or to be interpreted by others are the key elements investigated in the study of discourse. I think this is a very fundamental issue. We need we as speakers or listeners, we need to have the ability to interpret, to understand something, as well as to be understood by others, as well as to be interpreted by others, without facing any kind of challenges or difficulties. In other words, that our messages, what we say, must be clear, must be, without any ambiguities. Okay. Part of this course, of course, we have two elements, okay, which are very crucial in discourse analysis. These two crucial elements are cohesion and coherence. They are a little bit similar, or they sometimes students might get confused, okay, because they look similar, but in fact they have very subtle differences. So if we start by explaining the term cohesion, okay, cohesion refers to text, or when text must have structure that depends on factors different from those required in the structure of a single sentence. Such factors are described in terms of cohesion. So here we are not talking about single sentences or single words. We are talking about structure. We are talking about understanding a full sentence or a text. Okay? So cohesion refers to the ties, refers to the connectors. It refers to the ties and connections that exist within a single text. So here I'm not talking about one single sentence or a few words. I'm talking about a text as one body, as one structure. And through using these connections or connectors and ties, okay, we can build what is known as cohesion. Let's look at this example. My father, or before we talk about this example, let me explain this important point. Among those types of cohesive types are the following: he, my, I, she, etc. These, let's say, articles or pronouns, sometimes they can be used, or sometimes they can have the function of cohesive ties. Okay, أدوات الربط. Okay, they work as أدوات الربط. Okay, so we need to use these tools or these ties. Okay, they must be existed. They must be existed in every single text in order to understand a text, in order to understand a certain text. Let's look at this this example, which is taken from a short story. So my father once bought a Lincoln convertible. He did it by saving every penny he could. That car would be worth a fortune nowadays. However, he, etc., so and so on. So if we look at the those words and pronouns which are underlined by the red color, okay, these ones can be described as cohesive ties. So if we look at he, just the second cohesive tie, I will get, when I say he did it, okay, the first thing, or the first impression, the first thing which will come to my mind, that he in the second sentence refers to my father. Okay, same thing with it, same thing with he. So all these ties, okay, refer to a particular person, because I know that he, okay, is used for a masculine, okay, Same thing if I have she. I will get an understanding that she should refer to the nearest, you know, person. Okay? So these ties or these connectors are called cohesive ties. Okay. In this regard, some words maintain or keep reference to same people and things, such as he and my, as I have just explained here. So he refers to the same person, refers to the nearest person, which have already been mentioned before. There are also general connections that share a common element of meaning, such as money, okay, or like, for example, saving, penny or penny, and time, things like, or words like time and nowadays. So if I look at the first examples, I will get an understanding that these words deal with, you know, something related to money, saving, a penny, etc. Whereas if I looked at the following examples, such as time, nowadays, so and so on, these words obviously would refer to time. So these words can be used as hints to understand or to get the, you know, the general meaning of the text or the sentence or the structure of, or for anything that I'm reading or I'm listening to. So there are also connectors such as however, okay, which shows the opposite, to the opposite of what he already been said before. So we use however to the, or to show the opposite of what has already been said before. In other words, to show the opposite. For example, the ideas. If you are showing the opposite side of a certain attitude or a certain idea or a certain thought, you can use such connectors, okay, or such words or such cohesive ties in order to show the opposite. Okay? Okay, such cohesive ties, such as, you know, such as he or she or my or I, etc., give us, I'll just correct this. Okay, so such cohesive ties give us insight how writers structure what they want to say. The conventions of cohesive ties structure differ from one language to the next, obviously. Okay, in every language we have different types of cohesive ties, whether that's Arabic, English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, etc. So every language has its own cohesive ties. Cohesion wouldn't be enough to enable us to make sense of what we read. For example, Lincoln, the car, that car, her or him or she, and letter. These are a number of connections, but it's very difficult to interpret in their own. In other words, if they come alone without the structure, okay, without having them embedded in a text, okay, it will be very hard to interpret these words because these are very general words and they might refer to different meanings based on the context. So yet, this sentence, my father bought a Lincoln convertible, the car driven by the police was red, that car doesn't suit her, she consists of 3 letters, etc. Now I will, after reading, after putting these, you know, these scattered words, these scattered words in full, in meaningful sentence, I will get an understanding of what does it mean. At least some of what is meant by. Of course, when I read this sentence, I will not understand it 100%, but I will at least be able to get some insight, some understanding about the intended message that's wanted to be expressed by the speaker. So now it becomes clear from this statement, which is highlighted in red, that connectedness, okay, we experience in our interpretation of normal text is not simply based on connections between words. We need to look at what is called beyond the words, okay, such as the sentence and structure. So we need to look at the words, okay, but that's not the important thing. We need, obviously, and without any doubt, we need to understand the meaning of every single word, okay, but that's not enough for interpreting a certain discourse. We need to look at what is beyond the words level, what is beyond the word level, which is obviously the structure, okay, or the whole text, or the paragraph, for example. Okay, now I move to the second form, or the second type of discourse analysis, which is called coherence. Okay, coherence is another factor. So we can consider coherence and cohesion as two factors of discourse analysis. So coherence is another factor that helps us distinguishing connected text that makes sense from those that don't. This factor is known as coherence. So it's concerned with everything fitting together well. So it's concerned with putting everything together in order to fit well. It's something that exists in people. So it's something that exists in people, not just in words or structures, unlike the previous factor, which we have already talked about, which is cohesion. Okay, so coherence is involved in creating meaningful connections that are not actually expressed by the words and sentences. Okay, so we are looking at things that are not existed, or that are not apparent in words or sentences. Our target is what people say. Okay, so our main target is the people. It's not only related to understanding our text, okay, but rather involved in our interpretation of all discourse. It's present in the interpretation of causal conversation. Let's look at this example, and I'm sure by reading this example we will get a full understanding of what does coherence means, or what does coherence mean. So here we have two like couples, he and she. Okay, so the lady says, directing this sentence to her, I think her husband, saying that that's the telephone. So the man or the gentleman replied saying that I'm in the bath. Okay, so she replied again and she said, okay. So what about the explanation of this situation? There are no cohesive ties here, okay, within this fragment of discourse, yet they do use the information contained in the sentences expressed. But there must be something else involved in this interpretation, which led these two, couples to understand each other. So it's suggested here that the exchanges of this type are best understood in terms of conventional actions performed by the speakers in such interaction. Okay? If we just look at these two sentences, we will directly, we will directly understand that these two sentences are not, are talking about, or these two sentences are about two different things. one is about telephone, the other one is talking about bath. Okay, but you know, there is what is called conventional actions performed by the speakers, by these two people, which led them to understand each other. Okay, all right, so now I move to what is known as speech events, and this is a very, very important part of discourse analysis. So what is it? What speech events include, and what speech events mean? In fact, a speech event is concerned with exploring what it is we know about taking part in a certain conversation or any other speech event. Let me say this again. It's about exploring what we know about taking part in certain conversation or any other speech event. Part of this course, we need to know what is taking place, what is happening in a certain conversation. Of course, there is a huge variation in what people say and do in different circumstances, such as debates, interviews, etc. So there is a big difference, or there is a enormous variation in between what people say and what people do. Okay, they are not the same. For example, we have one of these. For example, the differences between debates, interviews, etc. A speech event, we have to specify the rules of speakers and hearers and their relationship. Okay, speakers and hearers are not necessarily the same. Okay, each one has certain rules and duties as well. At least these rules and duties are expected to be uttered either by the speaker, okay, or by the hearer. Okay, a number of factors need to be considered during speech, such as whether they are friends, or whether they are friends or men or strangers, etc. So a number of factors need to be considered during speech, such as whether we are friends, okay, whether we are just men, okay, whether we are just women, whether we are strangers. So these are different factors we need to be considered during our speech. We need to verify the relationship between these different factors. So such factors have an influence on what is said and how it's said. That's very important. Because of talking about the factors of how language is used, we need to analyze the actual structure of the conversation. So this leads us to talk about conversation analysis. Conversation is described as an activity in which two or more people take turns at speaking, and I'm going to talk about turn taking in the next slide. So taking or turn taking is it's something normal in conversation. We need to shift roles between the hearers and speakers. So a conversation is an activity, it's an ongoing activity which takes place between two or more people, along with turn taking that would happen during speaking. Typically, one person speaks at a time, and there tends to be an avoidance of silence between speaking turns. Of course, if there is too much silence, okay, that means that the hearer might not be listening well or might be interpreted very negatively. Speakers can mark turns as complete by asking questions or by pausing at the end of a completed syntactic structure, like a phrase or a sentence. And I think this is very intuitive. No one would disagree with this. No one would, for example, the hearer will not normally ask a question, okay, in the middle of the conversation. He or she must make sure that the listener, he must or she have, she or he must stop from saying something, and as a result of this, the hearer or the listener might take his or her turn, which might include asking questions, informing, requesting things, etc. So others can indicate that they want to take a speaking turn by making short sounds while the speaker is talking or making some facial expressions. So this is also another sign, which is intuitive as well, that happens in conversation. So if the listener or the hearer wants to say something, he might express, or she might, they might make certain facial expressions, or they might start uttering short sounds. Okay. Now I come to the turn, or I come to what is known as turn taking, or shifting or changing the rules between the speaker and the hearer. Okay, so there are different strategies of participation in conversation which may result in different conventions of turn taking. We know this, or this can be defined as turn taking. So it's a common strategy used in discourse and conversation. One strategy using connectors such as and, then, so, but all these connectors are normally to be used in discourse, and particularly during turn taking. And they are used in order to place your pauses at points where the message is incomplete. Okay, part of this, we have something called the cooperative principle. So in conversation, or during the conversation exchanges, it seems to be that the participants are cooperating with each other. This principle of cooperation between different participants, together with 4 maxims, was first described by Paul Grease in 1975, and accordingly the cooperative principle, along with the 4 maxims, which I'm going to talk about in the next slide, are presented together with what is known as Greasian maxims. So what about these maxims? What do they include? So in our conversation contribution, there are 4 different types of maxims. So there are 4 maxims, okay, which can be considered as part of what is known as cooperative principle. So the first one is called quantity, which deals with with quantity. Okay, so for example, it refers to making your contribution as informative as is required, but not more or less than is required. The second maxim is what is known as equality. So don't say that which you believe to be false or for which you lack adequate evidence. You need to say something which which is adequate evidence and which is completely true. The third type of maxim is known as the relation maxim, and it's it means, or it refers to something that is relevant. Okay. The fourth maxim, which may happen in during conversation and during discourse, is known as the manner maxim, and it should include saying things that are clear, brief, and in order. Okay. For example, without jumping from in other words, there is a graduality. So you start with what is known or what is common, and then you gradually move to what is a little bit unknown or less familiar. Okay? So don't forget these four types of maxims, which are considered as part of the cooperative principle, which happens during conversation. So quantity, quality, relation, and manner. Okay. In this course, we have also a very, very important we can consider it as a strategy or as a technique, which is commonly used in conversations, that is called hedges. So hedges can be defined as words or phrases which are used to indicate that we are not really sure that what we are saying is sufficiently correct or complete. Okay? So if we want to say something which we are not completely true of, or we are not completely sure of, we use such words. Like, for example, things like sort of, or kind of, or perhaps, or maybe. Such words, are used to indicate that what we are saying about is, might not be 100% correct. We know that it's correct, but it perhaps, might be, or it might be not correct. So to show, such words are used to show the accuracy of our statements. Okay? As for example in these, as we can see in these two examples, his hair was kind of long. Okay, instead of saying his hair was long, okay, I might say his hair was kind of long. Okay, so we can notice some level of accuracy in this sentence. Same thing with this example. The book cover is sort of yellow, so it's not completely yellow, okay, but it looks like yellow with with another color, maybe gold, maybe brown or lighter brown. So this is a sign of accuracy. So with these two sentences, the type of the maxims that are used here are quality maxim. Okay, we come also to another strategy. Okay, that is existing in discourse, which is called implicatures. So when we try to analyze how hedges work, we usually talk about speakers who are implying something that's not clear. With the cooperative principle and the different maxims which we have just talked about as guides, we can start to work out how people actually decide that something is implying something in conversation. For example, are you coming to the party tonight? Okay, if the first person raised this question, okay, the response or the hearer, okay, would reply to this question saying, I've got an exam tomorrow. Okay, if we contemplate at these two sentences or at this question and answer, we will realize that these two or this situation, okay, or these two sentences are not talking about the same thing, okay? They are talking about two completely things, okay? But, you know, but I will, you know, I will understand that this person, which is B, has an exam, okay? He will be busy, or she will be busy, which will, you know, which will, which will prevent this person to attend the party or to come to the party. So this is an implicature. This is a form of implicature. So in the previous example, P's statement, which is I've got an exam tomorrow, is not an answer to A's question, are you coming to the party tonight? Right? B doesn't say no, okay, or yes, okay, to A. Yet, A, the first person or the person who made this question, will interpret the statement as meaning no, okay, as an implied answer, okay, not as a clear answer. So this person, okay, A person, okay, or the first person, the person who made the question, will work out that exam tomorrow should involve study tonight and study hard and study at night, which would prevent him or her to come to the party tonight. Okay? So P's answer is not simply a statement concerning tomorrow's activities, but rather contains an implicature. Okay, so an implicature refers to a meaning that is implied. It refers to an additional conveyed meaning which is not clear, which is not obvious. Okay, something that will be understood by understanding the text or the conversation. Okay, background knowledge. To analyze the conversational implicature involved in B's statement, we have to describe some background knowledge, for example, about exam. That must be shared by the conversational participants. So the thing we are talking about, okay, must be familiar to, you know, to different participants. For example, when I say John was on his way to school last Friday, most readers report that they think John is a schoolboy. Since this information is not directly clear, it must be an inference understood from the text. Other references for other readers, okay, like John is walking or that he is on a bus. So John was on his way to school last Friday. So it depends on the inference. Okay? So we need to understand, we need to get a background knowledge, whether this background is relevant to a certain situation or a certain person or whatever. So we need to get as much knowledge as possible about this thing we are talking about. So, in a different example, last week he had been unable to control the class. Most readers might decide that John must be a teacher and that he's not very happy because he mentioned that, or the statement states that last week he had been unable to control the class. Okay, so this is a first interpretation that this teacher, okay, which is, which is John, okay, he's not happy being a teacher. We actually create what the text is about based on our expectations, okay, of what normally happens. This phenomenon is referred as a schema or script. So based on the context, okay, we can interpret the sentence. We can, extract the implied meaning. So this is called a schema or script. So schema is a general term for a conversational knowledge structure that exists in memory, okay? Not necessarily exist in words, okay, but exist in memory, which is already implied between the words and the structure. So as we have just seen in the previous example, we were using our conversational knowledge of what school, classroom is like, or classroom schema. We have many schemas or schemata, okay, that are used in the interpretation of what we experience and what we hear or read about. Supermarket schemata or supermarket schema would refer to things about food displayed on different shelves, okay, and shopping carts and baskets, etc. So all these things, all these items, which would be part of what is known as supermarket schemata or supermarket schema or supermarket script. So script or schemata, it's in many ways similar to schema. Okay, we are talking about script. A script is a dynamic script. A script is a dynamic. Okay, that's instead, let me delete this one. I think there is a repetition here. So a schemata is dynamic. Okay, that's instead of the set of typical fixed features in a schema, a script has a series of conventional actions that take place. So schema and script are to some extent similar. However, script is more dynamic than schemata. It doesn't involve typical fixed features, certain, or it doesn't include a set of typical fixed features, okay, of different, of different conventional actions. You have a script for going to the dentist, for example, or eating in a restaurant, etc. So the main difference between a script and a schemata or schema is script being more dynamic. So let's look at this example. Susie went to the nearest place, sat down, and ordered an avocado sandwich. It was quite crowded, but the service was fast. Based on our restaurant script, based on our previous or background knowledge, we'd be able to say a number of things about this situation or this scene, and even briefly described in the previous short text. Okay, so the conclusion is our understanding of what we read doesn't directly come from the words which are in front of us or which are existed in lines, okay, or on the page, but the interpretation we create in our minds, in our memories of what we read. Let me say this again. Our understanding of what we read doesn't directly come from words and sentences on the page, but the interpretation we create, we build in our minds as well as in our memories regarding what we read. So both are very important, but the second thing, okay, which is related to interpreting the meanings and regarding creating different meanings in our minds and memories are not a secondary thing, but rather this is a very important, very essential, and we need always to consider it and take it into account. Wish you all the best, and thank you for listening and being being a nice audience. I wish you all the best, and hope to see you again in the next lecture. I would recommend you to read the full chapter in our textbook in order to get a fuller understanding of this chapter. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.